Could you guys scoot in more too, as much as you can?
You gonna come jump in the middle here?
Okay. All right. Hey, everybody. We're doing a live session here with all the Bootstrap Farmer growers, or the ones that are still left. So I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. We're gonna introduce everybody really quickly, and we're just having kind of a sit-down roundtable talk, and we're just gonna see where the conversation goes. And we're talking about all the different things we've kind of learned this weekend or this week. So here we go. Let's see. We'll start off with Jeff over here.
Hey, Jeff from Profound Microfarms and Profound Foods, based right here just north of Dallas.
Where do we find you? Online.
Oh, Profound Microfarms on Instagram, Facebook, .com, and Profound Foods, same thing.
Excellent.
Hey, I'm Mike Nassery, Strategic Advisor from Vancouver, Canada. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook.
Drew Dimmler, head grower, Big Tex Urban Farms. You can find my blog on the company site, that's bigtex.com, or you can find me on Instagram. It's just Drew Dimmler, DREWDEMLER.
Brandon Youst, Bootstrap Farmer, creating local food market and vegetable at all those things.
Cool.
Dawson Mahalko of Jubilant Fields Farms. You can find me at Jubilant Fields Farms on Facebook and Instagram.
Piper with Urban Dirt Company. You can find me at Instagram, Urban Dirt Co.
Kieran Foran from Trifecta Ecosystems. You can find us at Trifecta Ecosystems on Instagram, trifectaecosystems.com, and then you can check out our side projects, Weekly Harvest and City That Feeds Itself, both ads on Instagram.
Josh Montgomery, I work with Jeff and Amanda at Profound Foods, and you can find us on Facebook and Instagram.
And I'm Amanda Van Hoosier. I'm with Just Pick TX, and that's my blog. And I also have a flower farm called Bishop Hill Farm Flowers, and that's on Instagram and Facebook.
Nick Burton, Creative Director, Bootstrap Farmer. I'm at bootstrapfarmer.com and on all social channels.
Excellent. So, oops. I'll set the camera here. Cool, guys. So stay tuned because I shot interviews and videos at many of these people's farms. So look for the content coming out here in the next month. So let's enjoy the conversation with all these awesome people.
All right, so we're going to go back to the possibility conversation and just kind of what you feel could be next for your business for 2019. That was a big conversation that we had this weekend. So, Jeffrey, I'll have you kick it back off again now that you've thought about it.
Yeah, so the next thing for 2019 for Profound Foods is, actually I'll start with the farm. So at Profound Microfarms, our next thing is to complete building out our last greenhouse. And so that'll also involve hiring a couple more employees. And we've got some pretty audacious goals for income and some food that we'd like to donate a little bit this year. And then at Profound Foods, our distribution food hub, we're right now, as of today, February 10th or whatever it is, we're at 14 farms, 49 restaurants. We'd like to blow that up to about 26, 28 farms and about 75 restaurants by the end of the year. And we've got some pretty good gross income goals for that as well to keep a lot of money in our local North Texas food economy.
This year, my goals are to help Guatsi Arctic Indigenous Innovations set up their initial demonstration projects, and now with this group, I've got even more minds to help with the farming aspect. And also from this, a takeaway is that this microgrid periodic table might actually be useful to micro farms a lot sooner than I thought it was going to be. So just going to move forward with those two projects and see what happens.
I guess my big thing this year is keep expanding the content creation that I'm doing, trying to feature more farmers and more minds in this field. On my farm itself, going to be jumping more into doing the microgreens, trying to expand in some other markets, try to start more of a private CSA, private block buying club. And yeah, should be a lot of big things coming soon.
So, kind of like Jeff was saying, I've still got some infrastructure and so forth to build inside my greenhouse, which I'll be starting on again soon to expand on what we're able to produce in there. And I want my indoor section to start looking a little bit more professional as far is how we handle food safety protocols and so forth. I want it to look like, you know, even though we're not going to market, I want it to start looking more like what it would look like if we were following those same, you know, safety issues, and hopefully help eliminate some pest and disease issues along the way. So those are goals of mine. And after this weekend, man, I feel like I have kind of a brand new goal, and that's to kind of help out with the insurance thing. You know, I work for a small company that does offer health insurance, so I'm going to start running that down with them and seeing how I can help out with that. So away we go, 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Bootstrap, we're just going to be going deeper with the products that people love us for, which is trays of all kinds. Craven Local Food Market, we're going to be hopefully moving into a new, much more exciting location that's going to house different kinds of business models that we can show off to small farmers to give them some sort of like another opportunity, another vision for themselves. And then, you know, we let the cat out of the bag last night about the Urban Farm Academy, so I'm just going to tease that for a little bit for now, but by the end of the year, you're going to see that out there.
Well, so I feel like my goals have kind of changed since yesterday, or at least several more have been added. But this year I'm close to tripling my growing space, and I'm putting in a lot of infrastructure. And since last year, I feel like the possibilities for me are just way beyond what I. If you told me 2 years ago that I'd be sitting here, I'd laugh you out of the room. Just no way I would have thought this possible. So, and it's almost like on a weekly basis. The things just grow and grow, and I have more possibilities. But yeah, I'll be close to tripling my growing space. I'll be doing a lot of trials this year of just different varieties, figuring out what can really handle the climate here, and I just really want to focus on becoming a better grower. Because right now I'm pretty bad. I'm only managing at growing good pests.
How about a successful Kickstarter fundraiser?
Yeah.
Excellent.
My goals for 2019 for my small little company, I'm not a farmer, I build raised bed food gardens. My goal this 2019 is primarily to find a crew, or at least one other person I can reliably count on to help me with the physical labor of it. Sales is not an issue for me, especially since I know Jeff Bednar. The second goal is to create a very tight business model for this business so that I can replicate it and kit it, if you will. So I'm working on kitting the garden beds process and finding somebody to help me build the garden beds consistently. That's it.
Let's see, for 2019, we just purchased a new farm in New Britain, Connecticut. That's basically at the minimum going to 10x our capacity. So a large focus for us is actually finding the outlets and sales channels for that increased volume of food that we'll be producing. And then on the city that feeds itself side, we're transitioning that to be really your farm to X brand provider. So whether that's farm to school, farm to table, farm to nonprofit, whatever it is, we're going to be the service provider that can help you figure out that model and the programming that will go around it. And that's a big push for this year for that.
So yeah, my goals for 2019 echo Jeff's, and actually they're the exact same as Jeff's for Profound Foods. And so to continue growing our farms and Profound Foods, our network, and listening to our farmers and understanding how we can serve them better. And then the same really for chefs or whoever else what are the customers we decide to take on this year, but growing those to over 70 would be incredible, and building out that network and listening to them and serving them.
So I think my 2019 goals, I have to divide them out because I do so many different things. I say I wear one hat and tilt it different ways. I'll just start with Slow Food DFW. I'm the chair, and I'm working on a really good crew to put on events and also work with volunteers. and try to get everybody have leadership in that. And then with Profound Foods, through this weekend, I'm really realizing that the farmers need a lot more help with crop planting. Like all our soil based right now don't have anything yet, and they could have something year round. And the food safety piece. So my goal there is to do a lot more training. And then for Just Pick TX is my blog. I have to let go of some things, and writing is one of them. Writing takes a long time, content, and I see people doing videos, and I've got all these other things to do, but I want to continue my social media piece to that, because Just Pick TX has a lot of respect in the area, and I have to keep that going. And then Bishop Hill Farm Flowers, I would like to work more on the training. A lot of florists are coming out wanting to know more about how flowers grow, and I need to initiate, and Piper and I've talked about this, that I have to create some value around that, because right now it's like, oh sure, come out and I'll tell you everything I know. But I need to have a system for that, that interest, and then make it have value to it.
I guess for me, it's just continuing to get much better at what we're doing. I mean, the podcast has gone well year one, but we want to step everything up. We want to step up video production. We want to step up the quality of the stuff we continue to put out, and make sure it's doing right by everybody, staying true to our goals of giving back to the community. So I'm working on a lot of me this year through building out systems for everybody else as we come up. So just recently spent some training with the production company so I could learn some new video software, which in itself is just going to help us be better. I want to make sure that everything that we do is clear. I want to make sure that everything we do is easily understood by everybody, and it provides a lot of value where people can take it and actually build off it on themselves. We all kind of work back and forth and continue to build this network and other networks as we go on. So that's my goals. I guess one of the talking points that we really wanted to discuss was yesterday we discussed the shortage of labor coming up, and beyond that, just the labor itself, but finding new jobs within agriculture. Josh administrating, a much larger system of interconnected farms. The ability to teach specialized Korean Korean natural farming, and making that kind of your own system, and then branching out in the community and building garden boxes and opportunities for other growers. Teaching cities to feed themselves. Every one of those has something beyond just the farmer aspect. Marketing, administration, systems, making sure that we align right with the industry and the community. So I'd like to dive in, just pretty much go around the room again for easy camera work. But Mike, doing what you do and looking at the industry from a very plugged in standpoint, but still safe enough on the outside that you can be very objective as to what we're doing. I mean, how do you feel that's going to pan out?
Well, something that I did bring up yesterday is there's a lot of sharing economy elements, and in what we're discussing around Food Hub, and so I would just say, like, maybe bundling everything under Profound isn't the only way to go. Like, perhaps there's some service providers that can be, maybe you position yourself outside and then you have a wider net. And so really just individuals finding niches that serve a larger market, as opposed to us trying to kind of capture that vertical integration that is typical of 20th century business. Like, everything today is about agility. So really thinking beyond your company to, like, how do I expand the amount of people I'm delivering value to? Because ultimately that's, I think, what drives a lot of us.
Can you re-ask the question?
So the question is, beyond just farm labor and proper training for that, and making sure that as employees come in, they know what the customer expects, the logistics of, why certain things happen on the farm the way they do, safety protocols both in food and IPM.
Okay.
How are you addressing training your people and building those into regimens that can be easily replicatable as new people come on or as you onboard new people? Aside from that, and adding to it, what has somebody like Josh come in and getting all of your focus off of all the little nitpicky stuff? How has that freed up your time? And how is having Amanda being the liaison for other farmers? She's not harvesting, but she's a gigantic driver of the business. So how's having these specialty people, not necessarily in an agricultural spot, change things?
So I think I'll answer that kind of two separate parts. So the Profound Microfarms is our 2.5 acre, 17,000 square feet of greenhouses, mostly hydroponic, a little bit of soil, a little bit of aquaponic farm. And labor issues there has been really interesting because I think kind of with this new technology that Karen was talking about is it brings in a certain different type of people. So there's actually no one that's ever even worked for us or that works for us now that was a farmer before this. So it's bringing in brand new people, and so we're lucky because we have a lot of fresh ideas, but we're also a little bit challenged because houseplants are not the same as running 17,000 square feet of 150 different kinds of leafy greens, edible flowers, microgreens, and that sort of thing. So for us, we've been able to be really fortunate. I put a job listing up the other day for essentially an entry-level position, and I had 42 people respond back with full resumes to get an entry-level position. And we're talking about corporate people, like amazing people that I would have never guessed that they want to get into this. And I know that they're not working for us for the money. They're working for the passion. And the cool thing about being so passionate about this, and this is what drives me as a farmer and all of these, all of us, is that passion goes a long ways. And that's I'm going to go home at night after I clock out of work. Not that I actually clock in and clock out, like my employees do, and they come back in the morning and they're like, hey, listen, I researched our kale deficiencies, and it looks like we need to, add iron and that sort of thing. So, and it's how do you compensate them for that as a, running a small business and a farm and a very tight margin, produce business. So I think that's the interest and excitement and the people trying to escape different, less sustainable, mentally and physically jobs, working in cubicles and that sort of thing. I think that goes a long ways, and so we've been really, really fortunate. And then specifically, we've also tried to curate our kind of Dallas-Fort Worth network to be people who have done master gardeners, the permaculturists, the backyard composters, and all of these people bringing together and then kind of bringing all of our knowledge together. So then, so it's kind of on the farm side. And right now, employee issues that we'll bring people on that have never really done much, and a lot of it is in a hydroponic farm we spend a lot of our time sanitizing, so it's like pressure washing and covering peroxide and knowing what to do with that. So it's all trainable things, and it also takes a lot of time to train. So figuring out how do I train my manager such that she can train the new people as they are onboarded, and putting in more systems and checklists. Which isn't particularly my skill set, has been one of our challenges. And then moving on to our food model, our food distribution model. Essentially, we've aggregated a bunch of farmers to specifically deliver produce, protein, dairy to chefs in Dallas-Fort Worth. We would not have been able to make any progress on that whatsoever as long as it was me being a bottleneck of having to answer text messages and Instagram and Facebook messages from chefs, and then taking that information and putting it into an Excel spreadsheet for my team to harvest. So through with a little bit of technology and software, and then amazing people such as Josh that came with just a world of experience inside of a startup. And Josh essentially worked for no money for the first 4 months. So it wouldn't have been possible unless he was bringing on someone that was so passionate that they would come in and be able to do that. So just humbled there, and then being able to go to Amanda Van Hooser is just anybody's from Dallas knows who she is. She ran the Dallas Farmers Market. She's sort of the Capel Farmers Market. She's an actual farmer, so she understands what that's like. And she was on board. There was no ask of how much do I get paid. That wasn't even a consideration. It was more like, hey, this is going to make a big difference for a lot of people. And to shorten my answer up now. It's passion, and like, so you can push through a lot of problems with passion. And at the end of the day, like, passion is going to get you so far, and then you can figure out how you're going to actually like produce income so you can keep doing this.
Stephen, I'm gonna ask you this in a much different way because of what you have going on. So there's a lot of people in this room that has come from other industries that are looking to get into something like this. You've put yourself out there as somebody that can teach very well in video format and to help people along, maybe make that jump or make some connections as to how to do it. How do you see the stuff that you're putting out and some of the things that you talked about that you're going to do moving forward, being a resource for somebody that's looking for a job outside, so that your videos affect people everywhere. So let's say somebody watched it and they're in the Hartford area and wanted to be a resource for Kieran in Trifecta, you know, and I may ask this both to anybody else in here, how could people take one of those videos and show initiative to a potential employer? Look, I've at least done this type of homework. I've at least come to you, and how is that going to dictate your videos moving forward from the expert teaching something that needs to be taught?
Yeah, you know, something that really helped me, I guess, learn a lot was seeing the different models of successful urban farms and other successful farm businesses that have been put out there. So in my videos, I'm always trying to, you know, teach them to fish, I guess, rather than, I try not to give a specific recipe of like, this is how you do this. Because we each have our own context, we each have our own, you know, of course, climate and ecosystem we have to deal with, different types of clients and customers. You know, moving forward, as I start to build a team for myself, I really think that that's something that it's a really unique skill and something that I don't have yet, and something that I've been trying to draw from all of you guys who have that talent and ability now. So, you know, I'd love to be able to show that on my channel as well, is not just kind of the nature side of it, but also showing them effective business models and systems that can apply to, you know, either interns or employees, and so that, you know, there comes a point as a farmer, even when you're starting as small as me, you need to keep growing and making your business bigger, and you can't do it all by yourself. And I'm really running, you know, into a wall now, right? And I'm doing videos, I'm doing farming, I'm doing everything. I have a lot of help from different people who are wanting to learn and things like that, but you know, it's time to start building a team and making a bigger impact. And that's kind of what having a team allows you to do. That's what when I see, you know, what Josh is doing, Piper, and all these people that have come on to be a part of your individual businesses. It's just incredible because you're collecting all these people that have these talents in certain areas that you don't necessarily have. I have certain talents that I have, and you know, I think it's best to focus on those areas, and that's how you'll have individually the biggest impact. But then you pull in these other people with amazing abilities, and then you know, all of you guys kind of rise up together and have this bigger impact as a group. So that's something I'm really excited to do in 2019. And beyond that, like all the content that I've been creating, I mean, I can't believe how many people reach out to me, and like hundreds of people at this point, you know, are like, I started a garden, or, you know, I was inspired by you, and now I'm doing microgreens in my garage, or I wanted, you know, I'm gonna start my own market garden, and they're prepping land, and they're even like, you know, taking some of the ideas of how I prep my land and applying that. So it's really cool to see, and that's, you know, that's how I learned too, from all these different YouTubers and podcasts and books, and I was pulling from all these different people and then trying to apply it. So it's just it's so cool to now kind of have that influence on people, and it feels weird in a way too. Like I don't feel, you know, I feel not that I don't feel worthy, but it's like, you know, I'm just a guy. We've been talking about that. I'm just a guy too, or just a person that's doing this. Like I'm mostly self-educated, and so I just always try to stress the fact that anybody can do this. You know, we have a 14-year-old sitting here that's doing it. You know, so I just like, I'm so proud, I guess, of you guys. I'm so proud of all these other people that are having the courage to kind of step forward and take up the gauntlet and go after this, because farming is not easy at all, no matter what type of farming you're doing. It's a very complex business, and it's so cool to see so many people getting interested, and I think they had a similar. People are all around are just kind of like having this awakening, basically, of realizing they're at their job. All of us who we were doing these different types of jobs, and then we're like, oh man, this just isn't doing it for me. Like, I'm making decent money, and I like my work, but it's not fulfilling like this deeper part of myself. Like for me, it was like, you know, the feeling of helping other people has been like the most powerful thing for me. Like that's kind of what drives me, I guess, is wanting to help other people, and then to see my actions actually helping people. That just makes me want to do it even more. And I'm sure you guys have kind of experienced that as well. So the more people that see us being leaders and changing things and doing that, then they will want to do that as well. So I think that's just a really powerful message for everybody.
Drew, you're in a unique position where you have the ability to help people that is possibly getting reinserted into the community after being away from a while. You're getting a little vacation there. You're also in a community where there's zero agriculture whatsoever, and this is the first time a lot of them have been exposed to any ag whatsoever, and it just happens to be a very technical side of agriculture.
Sure.
At a time where we're going to need a lot of skilled labor. So how do you see, on top of everything else you're doing and having to contend with, but you're having to consider bringing these people in and teaching them a skill that they could potentially go off and get great jobs at any of the places that are being represented here and in a field that's vastly going to need it very shortly.
Yeah, that's my strong hope, is that we're going to be able to bring people in, educate them, and you know, I'm not even just strictly to people who were formerly incarcerated or who maybe took a wrong turn in life that we're trying to rehab. But like I mentioned yesterday, I want to get involved at the school level. Let's get some young people learning from the ground up, you know, that can be the next generation of farmers, you know, that like Dawson here, you know, get them started young so that, I mean, by the time they're, you know, even in their mid-20s, they're going to be spinning circles around us, right? You know, that's my goal, is to kind of help create that exposure in South Dallas to whomever is interested. You know, be it people who are trying to turn their lives around at any age, or like I say, the people that we're working with at the homeless shelter, trying to figure out how to bring careers, you know, to that group as well, and then certainly younger people. And hopefully, as our world evolves, there's going to be more spots that they can fall into, especially on the indoor farming side. You know, I'm hoping in 10 years there's going to be an abundance of jobs waiting for these people that we're training right now. So yeah, it'd be really cool if we can become kind of the jump off spot for career building for some of these people we're working with now.
One other thing that I think is very unique in your situation is, for a month out of the year, there's a magnifying glass of, you know, a few 100,000 people going through a very technical greenhouse and seeing this potentially for the first time. We're going to throw a lot of responsibility on you to be the ambassador for all of us.
For sure.
Because this is the first time a lot of just the regular public is going to get a chance to see this. So taking on an additional role, again, we're going to throw a lot on you.
Keep it coming.
You know, but that's again, your people that are with you are going to have to be trained to answer questions in a way that's digestible to Joe and Susie Q public.
For sure.
That not only make the industry look good, but that also makes sure that the continuation of a lot of misconceptions don't continue forward.
Yeah, that's something that we visited about when we did the podcast. And yes, you're right. We're kind of the first line of defense in telling the story of what it is that we're doing. And, you know, like the whole GMO conversation that came up, you know, several times. I know when you visited during the fair. And yeah, we do get, and it does come with some training to a certain degree with my staff on the right things to say and how to handle certain criticisms and so forth that are going to come up in a diplomatic manner. right? But yeah, in a certain way, we are kind of, like you say, we're going to be the first exposure to indoor ag, especially that a lot of people are gonna have. So that could be a very good thing, or comes with some challenges, so to speak, for sure.
Brendan, we talk a lot about the right way to approach somebody about getting a job or working together. What are some tips that you have for people that are coming into the field and wanting to learn, needing to learn, and then being that two-way road between employer, employee, community?
Yeah. Just, you know, we run this with Bootstrap, and some of the questions we get, it's like, certain people, it's just very obvious, they just want you to solve all of their problems, answer all of their questions, because they don't want to use the Google machine. And just being able to, like Jeff's really good at this, or, you know, Trifecta's really good at this, like, come work for a project, let's see what you've got, and, you know, we might not even pay you for that, because we want to see, like, how passionate are you about this. And so, just being able to weed those people out a little better, is like, and this is why we, like, you know, Dawson, it's like, we want to amplify what he's doing, because he's actually, you know, doing the work, like, big time. And so we all recognize how hard that is, and that's why we're all surrounding ourselves with each other, because not everyone can do that. And so when we see someone who's actually kind of demonstrated it and proven it, I mean, our doors are open. But if you're just going to come in and just kind of like look to take, or just kind of be lazy about it, that's going to be very obvious to all of us. And so I'm willing to empower and help anyone that I can that shows that they kind of have earned that.
I think another thing we've proven out is not only are the doors open, but we'll bust a hole in the wall if we find the right people to create a new door.
Because, you know, we're trying to have impact, right? And so we've got to be careful about our time and can't go down your rabbit hole necessarily, because, you know, if we're trying to have the impact, we've got to make those decisions how we can best focus our time. And so, you know, even going back to like hiring people and all this, like I just see my job as, I have so many business ideas that I do really want to see through starting this year, even more. And that requires a shared vision, and that requires really good people that I need to bring on that I can empower. Like, you know, you, for example, I can go crawl in a cave for a month, come out, and the business is going to still be growing, and the media is going to be on point, because we have a shared vision. We know what we're doing. And I need to have that in all of my businesses for them to be successful.
You know, and if you did go and live in a hypothetical cave, which honestly I could see happening, it's something that we work on. It's something that we work on daily. We do a lot of planning. You're big on planning and writing goals down is something we also highly took from Jeff. But working on goals together, not for next week, not for tomorrow, but a year in advance, and then backtracking our way through that helps us stay in alignment, where if I'm gone, you're gone, something happens like that, it can continue. And I think if somebody wanted to get in this industry, what do you really want to get into this industry for? Similar to how a lot of us have goals bigger than just the job that we have, going, I want to be in this industry because of this, and using that as a driver to do the intern thing, to pay for your own education, to read that extra book or listen to that extra whatever. You know, I just think it takes a lot of self-awareness of your skills, a lot of self-awareness and desire to fix and work on any deficiencies that you may have moving forward.
Right. And we talk about this in the podcast all the time, because it's so important. It's like, what are you working towards? Is that where you actually want to end up? And so as long as you're clear about that, and that's even for myself, just I'm always adding more clarity. What do I want for my life? And you know, here we are. I can leave my house for weeks at a time and come back to it. Like, I really feel I can do what I want. Like, I can travel and meet the people I want to meet, because I was intentional about the way I set up my life, the way I set up my businesses and the systems. And so, you know, when we had Michael McCallowitz on our podcast, who wrote the book Clockwork, that was so helpful for me to learn how to implement a system where if I'm getting a text message about something, it's like, well, why am I getting that text? That's my fault. There's something in the system that isn't clear. So taking that ownership and that responsibility, and then empowering the people that I have to give them the confidence that they can just handle it, that I trust them, is what's going to be required of me going forward.
So Dawson, you're an entrepreneur, but in our previous talks, you didn't just roll out of bed and start digging up. You did intern for John for a little bit. So deciding that you wanted to be a farmer and then actually jumping off, what were some of the steps that you did to educate, like you were the boss and the employees all at the same time, so how did you get training? How did you approach interns? How did you develop mentors, and what did you work on to be better for yourself as the boss, as a laborer?
Well, so there's a lot to unpack here. Well, so when I first, my dad first got me into gardening, I decided I wanted to become a farmer then, but that I only knew big ag, and so I was like, I don't know, drive a big tractor and all that. And then I just kind of gardened off and on, but I wasn't very serious about it, and I did a pretty bad job, killed up with just about everything. And then in early 2017, I came across, I read one of Elliot Coleman's books. I read that cover to cover, and then I met John Llewellyn at the McKinney Farmers Market. And so he, in one of the weeks that I was there talking to me, he said, you need to come to my farm. You need to come work for me. And so we arranged that, and so I helped him out there for a while, and I learned a good deal of stuff there, and decided a lot of different ways that I wanted to go. But about that same time, I also came across Curtis Stone's YouTube channel, and I watched probably close to all of his videos. And
Talk about a rabbit hole.
yeah, and once you do that, you just have so much information right there, and he's given away a lot of information. And then I also read Jean-Martin Fortier's book. I read Curtis's book. I read a couple of other books that were written by Elliot Coleman. And then I was gardening in 2017, and then early 2018, I decided I wanted to take a commercial. And so just kept finding more books, and there's just so much information out there, and books are so cheap. And whether you're going to listen to them or read them, I prefer to read farming books, just because there's often graphs or pictures that are very, very useful in regards to figuring out what it is that you need to do. But I don't know, it's just been just going down one rabbit hole after another. Just find someone that you resonate with, and whether that's Steven or whether that's Jeff or really anybody here, just find who you resonate with and what kind of farming you want to go into. And there's just so much information out there that's either free or can be you can obtain for a very cheap price. And then I also got a phenomenal opportunity from Ray Tyler of Rose Creek Farms to go out there. I was out there for 2.5 weeks, and I got to attend much of the 5-day workshop that he put on with Curtis Stone. And so that has really catalyzed a lot of what's happening for me. There wasn't so much the business, learning a ton about business. I've learned a lot of that from Bootstrap Farmer Radio, and y'all have really done a great job of putting a lot of business information out there versus most of the other farmers or that are producing content. They'll show some of that, but there's a lot more of the nitty-gritty of growing. While I was out there at Rose Creek, there were just so many little things that now that I'm implementing them, just saving me a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of headache. So if you can if whoever's out there, if they can find someone that work for free or just someone that is willing to take them on and has a lot of knowledge, take them under their wing. Just if you put yourself out there, the saying that if you build it, they will come, it's been so true for me. And I think that if you just put yourself out there, you'll get a lot of opportunities. Because as you were talking about it earlier, and yet we were talking about it yesterday, there's not a whole lot of labor. There is a labor shortage in the agricultural space. So people are very excited when they see more people wanting to get into it. So if you put yourself out there, you shouldn't have too big of a hard time getting good information and getting good mentors.
You're up.
That's it, that's all I get. So just in the time that this has started, I've already come up with a whole new strategy. Build your team. So what happened with me, and just listening to the last episode you did this morning about when everybody's business started, I was trying to remember when I started Urban Dirt Co. was June of 2016. I built my first garden for my neighbor, and from that point forward, I built a ton of residential gardens, and then I got the opportunity, just because I was part of this network, and just to be part of another team, I got to build a restaurant garden. And then I got to build another restaurant garden, and then I got to know a few more chefs, and I have a chef's garden in McKinney where I live, which is great because it's in my own neighborhood and I get to talk about it. And I get to interact with that community really well. So for me, it's a labor shortage because right now it's just me, and so I have that struggle. And I just build raised bed food gardens. I don't farm, I don't do landscaping, I don't do roses, I don't do cut flowers, although that's interesting to me too. So all of these problems culminate for me as well, even though I'm not a farmer, because I need help physically to build the garden, so I need to build a team. I need to figure that out very quickly, or 2019 is not going to happen. And I don't necessarily need the growing skills because I can get that information, and I have a lot of that just over just years of experience of doing my own garden. In the last couple of years of having the business, I've learned how to garden in North Texas specifically, which is different than other regions that I've lived in. So that was a learning curve. Check, got it. But I think what's been the most valuable for me as a business owner has been being an acquaintance in the industry and being a participant. So because I'm not a farmer and I'm not a controlled environment person, yet I've worked at Jeff's farm for a short period of time, and that was incredibly eye-opening. Check. I've dug in the dirt, I've done my own thing. I belong to Curtis Stone's mentorship program. I paid for that. I paid for Rose Creek's. None of this really applies to my business, but I did all those things. I paid for all of these online classes because I thought there was value in participating in the industry as a whole. Even though my little tiny niche is very different, and I'm gardening in 4x8 and 4x6 boxes in other people's yards and getting paid really well to do it, there's still a connection that I needed to have all that information, and that knowledge is really important because now I know about growing lettuce in the soil. I know about growing lettuce in NFTs. I know about a lot about cut flowers just from knowing you and from having other friends that are doing cut flowers. And I have a pretty good sales and business background, so I kind of have a jack of all trades thing going on right now. And then when Bootstrap asked me to help them out, I'm like, check, I got this part too. So I feel like I have a really great networking connection. And now what I really need to do is take all that information and figure out how to build my own little empire, right? Build my gardening company into something that generates an income so that then I can be one of those points of connection that maybe somebody comes to me and says, oh, you know Bootstrap, you know Brandon, you know Jeff, you know Amanda, can you introduce me? God, that'd be so cool, right? Yeah, I know them, of course. Come with me. Because then the entry level into a network like this, entry level into a group of relationships like this is tough if you don't participate women in particular are not great at doing that because we feel like our turn will come. And when it's my time, it will come. Well, that's not always true. You have to go do it. You have to pick up your chair and walk to the other end of the table and join the conversation instead of being comfortable with your peers. You see the networking group or the people that you feel like are making decisions. Just get up and go join it. They're not going to tell you no. They're not going to shun you. We just don't live in that kind of world anymore. So if you're that person, that woman, that man, that kid, that whatever, and you feel like you're on the outside, it's wide open. You just have to make the effort. And it doesn't even need to have anything to do with your business necessarily, but you have to go participate, or just, you can't blame anybody but yourself.
Nobody in this room filled out an application to be
No.
here.
No, they participated in the events over the last few years. In 2016, everybody started getting going. Your name was out there, and all of a sudden, you said yes to enough things to where people knew you would participate and you added value. You know, you're here.
Thank you. So, I don't think there's anybody in the country doing this much for educating our industry than what you guys are venturing on. And we could open this up for the next several hours on you, but if you had to put the education of the industry and the importance of it in a 10-minute conversation, what's it all about for you guys? What's Trifecta in the city that feeds itself? The mission statement, how is that going to be applicable for a whole new crop of people coming into this from all of the angles that we talked about?
Yeah, I mean, last year, at the start of 2018, we had 4 people, and they were all partners. And now, at the start of 2019, we have 10 people working for our team. So it's a lot of growth to happen in 1 year. And one of the biggest and most, kind of eye-opening parts of going through that hiring process is there's no one in the industry who has a background in aquaponics. There's no, even, it's different than even hydroponics, but even in that industry, there's very few people who have prior experience in the field. It's all about on-the-job training. So one of the things that, we made a very conscious decision about was trying to get ahead of that problem because we're trying to grow rapidly and we're trying to expand by 10x, pretty much every year. How are we going to find the labor that we need that's talented enough to be able to handle that growth and that transition pretty seamlessly? So, we've always been doing a lot of work with schools and putting aquaponics systems in classrooms for STEM education and stuff, but the mission behind it started galvanizing when we were going through this process of, what we're really doing is a little bit of inception with in the classroom is getting people interested in this industry, in alternative methods of farming, and getting them passionate about it and getting them hands-on experience early on so that when they go into high school, when they go into college, or when they graduate and are looking to get into the field, we're there with the place for them to take that skill set and make a career out of it, but we need those people with the experience in order to do that. So that was sort of our mission with working with the schools. And then in terms of the city that feeds itself, looking at our urban, cities is for the most part, they're a draw on pretty much everywhere else in terms of resources, especially when it comes to food. They're relying on suburban and rural, parts of the world to provide all the things that they need for the cities to thrive. But, with these new modern farming techniques and methods like aquaponics, hydroponics, rooftops, gardenings, things like that, we can start producing a lot of food within urban environments. And so what we're looking to do is to see, okay, there's not going to be some big 100-acre farm in the middle of the city, but can we have that same sort of effect with a distributed network of smaller farms, and can we create the model that other farmers, whether they be entrepreneurs or whether they be institutions and organizations like schools who have a population who has the space and the time and the ability to grow food and just needs the enabling force to be able to see that through. And then when we network those all together and create a channel for distribution for all the food that comes off of all these small producing farms, does that have the effect of a large farm and a large farm network? And can we actually contribute, can cities actually contribute to, their consumption, and, whether that's growing 10% of the food or 15% of the food, just trying to constantly move that needle till we get to the point where a city maybe one day could potentially provide everything it needs, and it's not relying, on everywhere else in the world to survive and thrive.
Your team itself is highly, highly talented, and that ability to bring that many people in and to have early buy-in and to have them work through the early stages of that. How are you guys generating that kind of culture to where, hey, we're all doing just like everybody here that has a small company, we all have to wear all of that at all times. We can certainly stay in our lanes for the most part, but what does your company culture look like whenever it's facilitating that and that kind of growth? While you were hired for this, but you're also going to, hey, pull lettuce and seed every now and then as well.
Yeah, I mean, so, a lot of it is just startup mentality. You got to look for the people who have either been through that before or identify with it and are passionate about it. A lot of it comes down to the hiring process, and finding talent through hiring is one of the most difficult and challenging things to do as a small business owner. But one of the ways we've been able to sort of, cherry pick these very talented people and place them in roles to succeed is through the hiring process. No matter what it is, whether it's a farm position or whether it's a back office position, there's always a practical portion of our interview process where you have to, you're given a task and you're not given much direction, and we're trying to see how you handle that and how you accomplish it and what result you bring to it. And when you, exceed our expectations, that's when we know you're a highly talented individual, you're a self-motivator, and you're going to be able to handle the shifting and changing nature of the startup ecosystem. And then once it's on the team, it's, like you were saying, it's about galvanizing everyone around a common core and a common mission, and making sure that mission and the path towards where you're trying to get in that goal is very clear. It's well communicated. It's checked back in on often. So every week we have, a standing 30-minute meeting with our entire team where it's, and we do it by week. So, on January 1st, it's week 1. Right now we're in week 7. And it's here's where we are on our stated goal for the year. Here's where this team is in contributing towards that stated goal. And it's just all about making sure that the team is constantly checking in with each other, because there's so many moving parts in what we're doing, and there's so many, things that we're doing beyond just being a commercial farm, that sometimes the farm team feels disengaged from what the marketing team is doing or what the City That Feeds Itself team is doing. But having that touch point every week is how we get everyone on the same page and understand that your role is still contributing to the greater picture. Just because you were out there cleaning rafts, well, you're also doing it in a way where we're setting up the standard operating procedure for, when we open up the next farm and we're trying to create the network of farms. You created the pathway for the next person to come on and be able to seamlessly integrate into that team and that growth. And so there's a lot of that. And then outside of that, company culture is a very hard thing. It's something we've definitely struggled with. And kudos to our team for calling us out early on about, we need more, engagement and, activities beyond just the work. So a lot of the times, at least once a month, we'll do a lunch and learn, which is where we bring, anyone on the team can propose a lunch and learn, and it'll be anything from our design engineer will run people through water dynamics and why that's so important to the farm to, last month our head of marketing ran a lunch and learn that was how to use your weaknesses to find strength. And it was all about using your national tendencies. If you're someone who is, let's say you're lazy and you're bad at diet, but you don't mind cooking, well, pick one day in the week to cook all your meals so that the rest of the week you can just be lazy, but you'll still eat healthy because you already have prep meals. So the lunch and learns have been a really interesting way for just the team to sort of highlight their various backgrounds and bring them to the forefront. And it doesn't have to have anything to do with farming, but it creates that culture of we're all trying to be self-improvers, we're all trying to be self-starters, we're all trying to just improve in our roles and in our personal lives in a way that helps us as a company just continue to grow and continue to thrive.
Thank you. A perfect follow-up is, as your previous company scaled way up, the people that were on staff, how did they adjust? I'm sure some left, I'm sure some new ones came on, I'm sure there were some turbulent waters in the meantime. How did the company survive bringing on new people, people leaving for various hurt feelings or whatever, which I could imagine would happen in that type of environment? If you could walk us through scaling up a company that rapidly and what that does to that type of culture.
Sure. So the biggest lesson that I learned at Nature Nate's during this rapid development was that company culture really is top down, right? And so if you have leadership, if you have executives who all share a common vision and treat people well, it echoes throughout the company and it creates something that's really, really, really cool. And so at Nature Nate's, that's exactly what we had. We had Nathan Sheets, who is just an incredible person, incredible leader, who treated other people with love and respect and cared about everybody. I mean, he was really what I would call a servant leader. And you would see him doing the dishes. You know, he owns the company and you got 100 employees and he's the guy in the kitchen after our monthly lunch doing the dishes. You would see him in the bottling room joking around with people who might have the lowest paying jobs in the company, you know, and he's there right there with them, supporting them and leading. And I think that was what really enabled people to be excited about the vision that not only Nathan but the other leaders on the executive team had for the whole company. It's just that feeling of we are doing something really powerful to change the world and doing it for all the right reasons. And so we did have company lunches at least once a month that were really, really fun times. And I would also say that hiring was a huge part in making sure that they hired the right people. It wasn't really at the very beginning. The company was Nathan and then pretty much people that he had known for years, that he just kind of saw potential in, and just gave, you know, roles of authority and power, and knew that they were like-minded people and good people, and so not hiring a whole bunch of outsiders, but hiring people that, you know, he knew shared the common vision was really huge. And then as we scaled, him being very intentional in finding those right people, whether it's through conferences or, you know, whatever means, put them in the right positions. I mean, that was just, people are just so important. So yeah, I feel like.
Can you give us an example? Because I have certainly felt this. I know Jeff has felt it, and I'm sure anybody with any type of business that goes through some success has. Was there ever an example of some employees seeing the growth, not feeling like they got everything that they should have, not fully understanding that just because all of a sudden you're making a ton of money, that money is not allocated to growth or to fund some other project? I mean, how did you guys deal with employees not being happy with things are going because the company was successful, but they may have had to stay at the same pay rate for a while?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that happens in any company that, you know, in any industry that does really well. You have people who come in at a certain level, and then the company grows in a way where they are maybe in a little bit over their heads. And it's just remembering, and I really think it's just a top-down approach, right? So it's having the leader treat that person with respect, and having those really important conversations, and being on the same page as far as understanding, like, hey, we're at this level and this is what needs to happen, and coming to an agreement like this might be a little bit over your head. And there were things that happened that were, you know, over Nathan's head. I mean, it's hard to really put your pride aside. I feel like it's one of the hardest parts, to realize where you're weak, and it was a really interesting thing, seeing that happen, where, you know, there were times where it was like, hey, we're way in over our heads and we need to realize that and hire somebody from the outside. And it was just conversations that had to happen. It was meetings that had to happen, and doing them the right way and treating people with respect and love is really all it's about. The worst thing that you could do, and this is something that I rarely saw happen at Nature Nate's, and is just hiring somebody and then not telling anybody, you know? So creating a company where everything's very open is really big if you want to have that, maintain that feeling of inclusion and camaraderie and really that shared vision. And that was something that I felt like Nathan did an incredible job of. And I mentioned that we did those group company lunches at least once a month. And he would take that time to tell people, you know, what's going on at the company and be as transparent as he felt like he could. And even jump the gun on some announcements, which was always fun. But just him being transparent led to a company culture of trust. And when you have a company culture of trust, you don't have people who are in the background, you know, spreading rumors, because everything's out in the open.
I think when times like when an employee becomes disgruntled, it's that self-awareness that Brendan and I focus so much on. They're not aware of the needs of the company, the struggles that management and ownership have to keep everything afloat week to week. Oftentimes they don't remember those weeks where you're at the pawn shop trying to figure out how to make payroll, you know, and when it finally does come back around, that lack of self-awareness puts them in a position where they cannot empathize with all of the past experiences, or maybe those new hires that came on that don't have the perspective of how things used to be, and just to appreciate the ability to breathe for them.
Yeah.
Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, like, growth it's interesting because everyone has their own perspective on what that means, right? Like with Bootstrap growing so much, it's actually like, it almost adds more constraints sometimes because you've got to be able to control that. And you keep having to make these like leaps of faith. Like before you're comfortable with it, you have to do it. Yeah. And, you know, it's not like we're rolling in money. It's because we keep plowing it back into ourselves because we're playing the long game here. And so that's why it's important to bring on the right people who can really share in your vision. Like Nick's extremely patient and we're both patient. And that allows for us to think in a way that allows for that long-term thinking instead of making these short-term plays and just doing this or that, which kind of degrades that company culture in a way. And so just feel fortunate that, you know, since the beginning, was listening to the right influences, right podcasts, reading the right books that just said, you know, if you believe in what you're doing and you can be patient along the way. I mean, I'm extremely impatient day to day, but I'm also very patient about what we're trying to do over the long term.
Yeah, I feel like there's a difference between urgence and impatience.
Right.
You know, I mean, you can be urgent, but still feel a need to be sense of urgency, but then also be patient.
Right. And so as the leader of the company, you got to be able to push people, but at the same time, like always remind people like where we're actually at. And so we're all learning. You know, it's like this is new to me too.
Yeah. Something you want to say?
Nick being patient was just a phrase I was trying to process.
I like what Gary Vee says, micro speed, macro patience.
Yeah.
I think that's a great quote.
Sums it up.
So you are in a position over the course of your career where you have to deal with an enormous amount of different possibilities, different businesses at different stages, all coming together at farmers markets and mitigating all those type A's under one roof, and sometimes wishing people were type A so they would promote themselves. So as far as education to somebody coming to market, or education for somebody getting out there and promoting themselves, you know, is there anything that you can highlight for us?
I'm just going to kind of go back into starting up businesses or starting up programs. I did a lot of programming, nonprofits, and in doing that, I had this idea that if people were involved from the beginning and had ownership in how it's built, how it's maintained, you know, how even what the name is, then they have the buy-in for that project, and then that will become the culture, and it'll be much more sustainable, that it didn't have to always evolve around me, because I was building something to walk away. And so it was always like, in my mind, I always wanted to have models, and that model could be used for others to say, oh, there's the model, and let's do something like that. It doesn't have to be exactly, but if you had a really good model and it showed, then it could influence others. So when I started School Gardens, that was the idea, is to have that as a model. The teachers all knew, why we had it, and they were part of it. So I could walk away from there, start community gardens. That garden, it was started in the 90s. It's still going. They still hire outdoor educators that are outside, which is rare for a school. And then the community gardens, there's 3 community gardens that are 20 years old. And they all have leadership, because I always built leadership into all the programs. Now these are all volunteer kind of run. They all are volunteers. So that had to be the culture of the organization, but it also, you're creating the leadership, but we changed a lot. I mean, sometimes it was every 2 weeks, who's gonna lead the next meeting? So everybody had a chance to grow as we were growing. And then with the farmer's market, I worked for the city, and they were like, well, let's just go and get a trailer of produce and go up there and set it up and sell it. That'll be our farmer's market. And I'm like, oh no, this is a perfect opportunity to develop people. Give our citizens something, that they can wrap around. It'll be positive for the community. And there was a lot of, oh, that's not gonna happen. Nobody will do that. But by creating this system of, it started out with, I had kind of a vision, but I was gonna let the people who showed up at the meeting put that together. Those first people are still involved, and it's 17 years old. So they had total buy-in to it. They're all volunteers. They'll show up at 4 in the morning to get the market set up. They'll be going out on farm visits. They never ask, oh, I need money for my mileage. They're just in the passion of it. So the community gardens model, 2008, everybody wanted a community garden. 2009, it was like everybody's calling us. I started tracking it. It's mentored over 200 community gardens, because it was a model, but they're not all the same. And we were also very giving of, this is the kind of boards we use. This is how we hook them. Everything was detailed out. Same with the farmers market. It was one of the first farmers markets in the channel. And then you go out and you're like, I can do this. I watched the video, and when you get out there, you're like, oh, I don't even have something I can screw the bender on. So I had 2 fence posts at a gate. I took the gate off and screwed it into the fence post, but I didn't realize I screwed it in backwards. So I had to keep stepping over the fence, so I had to build a little step over to get over the fence to get the other side to pull it, but.
Amazing thing is she's figured that out without having to call us.
No, I know how to figure out. So that was, the thing I realized, that once you start doing it, it becomes easier than you thought it was gonna be. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna take that agribon and I'm going to spread it out on a 50-foot bed, and it's 10 feet wide, and where's the wind? You just kind of figure out, you go with the wind, and let it, and then you hook down that side, and then it's like flapping out there, and then you walk around to the other side. But you don't know that until you're out there holding that, and the wind's blowing it, and it's cold, and you're like, but what a feeling of success when you get to that, when you get it done. So I'm building my flower farm also as a model. Because in North Texas, I want people to see that you can do that. You can do that when you're at any age, and that you can do it with minimal inputs. And that's my goal, is to show how you can build your soil. I really think that that's gonna become a model, and then I can take that and train others. A lot of farms wanna have that as an additional revenue, is to do cut flowers. So I'm trying to track everything, and then I can train others.
I want to go back to what something you said. As you highlighted vendors that were the model, that were doing everything they needed to do and more,
Mhm.
you did this very similar to what I did, was you played favorites with those to show that that was the example. Did you ever have some people that maybe didn't have that abundance mindset that would then say, well, they're just playing favorites because of X, Y, or Z, and not realizing that they were the favorite because they were doing what they needed to do and they were helping everybody?
Oh, yeah, and they would never see that they needed to change, but they were only hurting themselves. And that, you can try to help some, but if they're not ready and they're not there, I mean, it's just totally out of their.
It's like giving unsolicited advice that never hits home. I have one more question, and then we'll wrap it up because this will probably take 30 minutes on its own. One of the things that I want to, my little pet project that I've been allowed to do at Bootstrap this year is the meetup events and the things that we get to do beyond social media. It seems to me like the last 3 years have been, let's get on social media, let's spread our word, let's use this platform that's so powerful. And now we're more focused on, okay, now that that's done, why don't you get your ass out in the community and actually meet some people, whether that's local, whether that's national, we're going somewhere, going to a conference, doing something like this. And these meetups that we're having, similar to this mastermind, is a lot less complicated than what people are making it, but it does need a structure. And we're going to be talking about that very shortly coming up. I've made a list this weekend, if you can imagine. But what I want to illustrate is maybe somebody that has gone to the couple of meetups that we have, I want to hear about that. And then specifically on the mastermind side of things, encouraging people to not wait for us to come to your town or not wait for somebody else to do something, but you as a market manager, or you as a farm owner, or you as, I just want to meet other people in my community, or you as Jeff. You know. I know very recently you've spent a lot of time, Mike, traveling to a lot of different places and getting with your kind of people that you want to learn from, and that's going to make you better. So did something this weekend surprise you? Did you were your expectations blown away? What was the main takeaway that you had from this weekend, and putting yourself in a position to learn from a group that would not have been facilitated if you had not just said, yes, I'm coming?
So the diverse backgrounds of each person in here has kind of been highlighted, and you know, that's usually the case within urban farming, but it's been a really interesting mix here with the curation and the geographic diversity from East Coast to West, and so that was really kind of the surprising thing. Like Nilesh is not the kind of person that I've seen in farming at this social impact level. I know they're there with the big companies that are raising tens to hundreds of millions, but it wasn't just like that. He's got that finance background that can really help us inform long-term strategy and risk, but that to see him going into branding and really having a unique message around that, where it's not the typical ad agency jargon, and you know, bringing Maslow's hierarchy into branding, that was kind of incredible. And yeah, I don't know, like every trip I've gone to with people that I've met before has been a blast. So I was kind of expecting just, you know, at least I'm gonna go have fun and everything else is gravy. So the school discussion, obviously I'm very interested in. I've had similar thoughts around the project that I'm involved with, and you know, like with Trifecta, with starting a unique organization, you almost need to say these are lessons that you need to learn if you want to take a job here. And so even hearing your experience was reinforcement I wasn't expecting to come across at all. And, yeah. Also, like, to be in Dallas, you know, I'm from Alberta, we call it Texas North. beef and oil country, and but you know, to hear this conversation, which could easily be on the left coast or in New York, I'm not too surprised, but I'm pleasantly, I'm pleased that the discussions have kind of gone as wide and diverse, and I've already put my list of, think of like at least 5 women who need to be here, and like one's a marine biologist who started a zero waste grocery store that Henry Gordon Smith interviewed a while ago, and you know, it's not immediate to what we're doing, but that's someone who is dying for suppliers like us. And you know, she's gonna keep our costs down. Forget about talking about packaging, like she's gonna help you eliminate that plastic waste packaging in the supply chain. And yeah, so it's really just like you guys have me excited to write more and, you know, get my message out there, knowing that the platform's gonna be there for all of us to start amplifying our message together.
Thank you for coming. Jeffrey?
So for me, I don't know if there was anything I was really surprised by. Like I knew the network that was coming. So like you guys are my people, and like we have so much in common that I just like knew it was going to be a good time. Number one, but the for me, concrete takeaways, like real stuff that's leaving is between a conversation with Ryan earlier. He does 100% sustainable, reusable packaging on his indoor farm, and we're using a lot of clamshells that I'm not committed to right now. Like it kind of makes me sick how much we use, and that's just kind of what we've had to do to get to where we are. So he kind of laid out a clear path of like, here's exactly how we move forward to eliminate that by the end of the year. So like that alone, besides all the shit that's not going into the landfills, like that was a cool takeaway that came from this weekend. Also having, we've got a new kind of consulting project coming up that's going to involve a bunch of LED lighting, which is I haven't had to learn that because we're all in greenhouses. So having the resource of being able to come here and ask questions again of Ryan and a couple of these other guys about like, hey, what do we want to use? What's your experience? That is invaluable. Like short of going to manufacturers and being sold something, like going to real world people who are really using this, that's another concrete thing I took away. I'm also extremely excited to be able to kind of introduce Josh and Amanda to a few of my other, you kind of knew a few of these people, but you didn't know everybody, and then that's kind of the benefit of being part of this network, specifically with Brandon and Nick, is that there's a lot of this kind of thing going on, from New York Ag Tech Week to Indoor Ag Con, and like all of these conferences. We have crews that kind of go around, and just being that we're all really, really open, and kind of an ask me anything, like how much is your electric bill? Like, we're like a lot, how much water are you using on your farm? Like, I need to learn about compost tea, and like that is, I think it's super cool. I don't know enough about it, but being able to like call or text you now, like that's a cool resource to be able to have to forward sustainable growing and for us making an environmental impact.
And from two different sides of the spectrum.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Like and then also, seeing passion from so many people, and also being in a room where there's people that totally disagree on things, vehement, just like fundamental belief, and we're still able to sit here and be friends and, move forward, and each, kind of be with each other inside of that, I think is super cool. So, did that answer your question? I'm trying to remember.
No, that did.
I'm
going to probe you just a little bit more. I try to do that straight. You come from a background way beyond agriculture of doing things like this, going to seminars, going to meetups. It's just part of who you are, and at a much, much higher level than what most of us have been exposed to, I think with the exception of Mike, who gets out quite a bit. What can people do within their own community for their first time going out like this? And do you have any suggestions? Give us like 3 or 5. Keep it semi-short.
Keep it short. So number one is I try to spend 10 to 15% of my gross income on education. So I'm constantly looking for classes, training. Still today, yeah. Like I'd love to have that be 20% of my income. To like every time I spend money on going, $300 flight to wherever, and meeting people and getting with people is always worth it. I've never once regretted money that I've spent on education, whether it's online training or anything like that. Like that's the number one for me. And Also, figuring out how do we create a business that we can spend money on our employees and our partners' educations. So everybody kind of gets brought up and learns new things, because for me, I would be bored as shit sitting doing the same thing, doing it over and over. And that's kind of like the fun part about being an entrepreneur, is I get to create new projects and then enroll new people and come in and take that on and be like, okay, cool. Then you take this. I'm gonna keep running this way, and we'll keep on building. Secondly, is figuring out your method of learning. So for me, I'm an Audible learner. I was talking with Dawson earlier about audiobooks. Like, I constantly, as soon as I figured out like 4 years ago as an Audible learner, I jumped all into podcasts and audiobooks, and it's just what works for me. If I'm not talking, like having a conversation, I'm listening to books, and that kind of education has worked well. And then lastly, and the most important thing, is cultivating a community. That's kind of fits into this growing theme here. But how to find your tribe. That's kind of the conversation we were having yesterday about like finding the people that really, really care about the same things, and then finding out where do they hang out at. And for me, it was starting with master gardeners. That's how I found my first couple of employees, and then the agricultural students and people like that could bring a lot of that knowledge that I didn't have, having not grown a plant before I bought a farm. So so that in-person meetups, I think, is really important. And then to kind of speak to that last point about you guys putting this together to bring us in, is one of the ways I think that we have on my company has found the most amount of success is by bringing together all of the stakeholders. So we bring farmers together, we bring chefs together, we put them in the same room, we make a bunch of really nice cocktails with flowers in them, feed people amazing locally grown healthy food, and then stand back. Like, it's not the Jeff show at all. It's like, hey, you need to meet so-and-so, and then, going around and just making those connections, and then standing back and watching the magic happen. And then I think that people are naturally attracted to, things that are going on there. They naturally come and go, hey, how do we become a part of this? And that's why I'm here. Like, I want to come be a part of what you guys are doing. Like, it's super inspiring. And 3 years from now, it's gonna be fun to watch all these videos and go, oh, holy shit! Like, we had no idea. Like, that's what's gonna happen, and it's exciting.
I just wanted to say that, I found many tribes, but once you do deliver value to that, you might meet 10 people, you might have 10 conversations, one might convert into a longer conversation, but you never know what happens down the road. Like, our friend Chris Powers, we met under the vertical farming context, but now we're discussing environmental remediation and biomass. So we're both kind of out of where we started, and the relationship continues, and who knows what we're going to put together in the future. So.
And that's the fun thing, evolving together. I mean, just because we started I started mowing yards 20 years ago, and that's taken a drastic turn. But if you look back on the history of it, it's all been, I could see how it all happened, and it's neat, the mutual friendships that we all have. And then the other thing that always seems to come up is, it may take forever to meet somebody for the first time, but after that, you kind of see, I don't know why this happens, but you kind of tend to see them more often. Like Drew and I, it took forever for us to,
It did.
an hour and a half away. And then once it did, I mean, we've seen each other
on a regular basis.
So,
Yep.
but I think that's putting yourself out there, opening up the universe to that kind of thing happening. So, of course, I don't think no matter what happens, I'm going to let you get too far, because I enjoy the conversation so much. I'm going to ask you two different questions. Number one, from the more open meetup type of thing, where you're hosting something to bring the community together, not really to discuss X, Y, or Z like we did with this mastermind, which we'll get to in a second, but you who stepped up and hosted the other night, thank you very much. I know it was nervous at times, but what did you learn by being a part of that and hosting that? And you've been to both meetups now that we've had in Dallas. So
Yes.
let's first look at what those type of meetups where you're in the room with all of the different farmers, all the different chefs, all the different local food supporters. It's a very diverse crowd. Give us your takeaways from that, then give us the lens of hosting it, and then we'll follow up with this weekend.
Okay, so going to both meetups, I think the first thing that I learned, quote unquote, is the massive amount of interest there is in this space, in this area especially. I mean, not only were there a large number of people who were in our industry, in the green industry, we'll call it, so to speak, but especially the other night, there were a lot of people who came into that greenhouse who I didn't know, and I don't think any of us knew. They had just saw Bootstrap Farmer, or they saw one of our Instagram pages or whatever, and are like, I want to get connected with what they're doing. Whatever that movement is, I need to go find out about it. And I think that was really cool to see. So that was definitely one thing that that I learned. You know, was just kind of the gravity that this thing is starting to get. Another thing, and this felt so good, and I can't thank all of you enough for this, but to be able to get people from my own industry to come into our space, you know, especially people who are doing some amazing things like all of you are, and to get positive feedback on the way my plants looked, or the way the greenhouse looked, or whatever, was overwhelmingly a great feeling. So I thank all of you for that. Not that, I mean, trust me, if we went back in the daylight and, you know, you didn't see it under the pink lights, maybe things don't look quite so great. You know, we're very strategic about that, right? No, and we still have a lot of learning to do. I mean, I'm definitely in my infancy of this, especially on the indoor world, you know. So still have a lot of learning to do, but it was great to get the positive feedback. And it was also great to see that we could accommodate something like this. You know, there was a lot of people coming and going that night, and we had a DJ and food and, you know, marketing material and so forth. And I felt like it was I did not feel congested, not in the slightest bit. So it was nice to be able to be a meetup place and introduce new people to what we're doing.
Was there any logistical takeaways? Like if somebody was thinking about doing this for their own community, what did you learn from actually pulling it off standpoint? I mean, we all did it together, but from your side of things, how did that look?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, you took care of most of it. All I really did was we swept the floor and kind of, you know, I think we pulled a couple tables in. So, I mean, you might have to answer that question more than me. It was easy from my end.
Okay.
It was easy. I would encourage people to do this. You know, and everyone has their own different policies. Not everyone, like you were saying, like Ryan Pierce, he certainly wouldn't want to do an event in his grow room, right?
But that's not to say he couldn't do an event in
Yes.
his area.
He could do it at the public library or at the bar closest to his house or something and invite other people. I think there's strength in numbers. I think small farmers, if we're gonna make it, we have to work together. And that has to come from information sharing. It has to come from maybe physically picking up a shovel and going in to help your fellow farmer plant some rows when one of his guys is out sick, or help him harvest someday or something. We need to have each other's back every way we can. And I think the best way to facilitate that is to do these meetup events.
Okay, so moving away from the more open thing, this was very much an invitational of people that were working towards a common goal together. First time at some type of mastermind, what was your takeaway, and what were you surprised that happened along this week?
Let's see. Yeah, it definitely was my first time, so I wasn't quite sure what to expect. It was really cool. Like I say, I did have a couple of more concrete takeaways, so to speak. One is the insurance thing. That's definitely something that I wanna help out with. I wanna see if I can help out with that for sure. Other things that kind of seeds that got planted in my head, so to speak, is I want to make my program more sustainable. I want to learn more about that. I learned a lot from your presentation, and both indoors and outdoors. You know, I was very inspired by learning the techniques that you employ, and I think that could be really beneficial to what we do out in the community, you know, because that's a great way to get people thinking about soil building and how to, you know, create these really, really fertile plots of ground where it may not take a lot of money to get started with, you know, and that could be very valuable where we go in South Dallas. And I wouldn't necessarily call this a surprise, so to speak, but I really enjoyed learning how in depth your program is of a trifecta. I knew about you from Nick's podcast, and I'd kind of followed y'all's Instagram and so forth. I did not realize quite how in depth your programming is up there, and I was super impressed. And I look forward to visiting with you up there sometime. And hopefully learning more about what y'all do.
Appreciate that.
I'd like to say something about meetups if that's cool. Yeah. Yeah, so one of my biggest takeaways from this whole thing and meeting everybody in Dallas was I was so impressed by the network of farmers that you guys had and how you were already connected and knew each other, were helping each other, giving each other advice and all this stuff. You know, I don't have that in San Diego. As far as I know, there's been a few little meetups that different people have put together, but there's no like strong group like you guys have. So that's something I really want to try to take back to San Diego to get this going. And I think that's a really good message for farmers all across the country and across the world that we got to meet up together. We got to join together, especially as the small farming community. Like, we don't have a lot of power as individual farms and people, but when we join together, man, it's going to be incredible what we can pull off. So if you are in San Diego, Bootstrap Farmer is going to do a meetup just like we did here in Dallas, and it's on the 25th. It's going to be on the 25th. If you're interested, message me and I'll give you guys more information. I'll be posting about it as well.
Another thing, I would like to say that the Intense Conference is going on the 24th, 25th, 26th. I'll be there. The meetup is kind of, there's going to be a lot of the same similar people. So if they are in San Diego, it's a really, really good conference. And
excellent. Yeah, it's the Intense Conference. If you're in San Diego, look that up. So yeah, hope to see some of you guys out there, and we'd love to meet you. So I want to start up something like this, you know, every 3 months or something. We should be meeting and talking and sharing tips and what's going on. So.
And I think a lot of times you go to a conference and there's so much energy and buzz and everybody's so excited, and you get home and you go like that. So it requires a lot of maintenance to maintain any network, but if you're leveling up at the same time, it's like extra intensive. So I as much as I encourage it, people need to go into these eyes wide open to further the conversation, to keep it going. It is going to work, but just like anything else we grow, it requires maintenance, requires love and fertilizer and dedication from everybody involved, and then a lot of empathy and understanding that, well, I know this is their busy time of year, so maybe we should host something, a month down the road or something like that. And logistics are always a trouble. So just go into it knowing that it's going to require a lot more than just throwing a date on the wall.
Right, but there's this hunger for it. I know a bunch of the other farmers in San Diego, and we talk about, I'm going to come to your farm and we're going to check stuff out. And I think it just you guys took the initiative to say, we're doing this and we're going to organize it all. Here's the date. I mean, it took a lot of work and effort, right?
And nobody gave us permission.
We just did it. Yeah. So if I do that in San Diego, if someone does that in Pittsburgh or whatever city, people are gonna come. Like, don't even worry about the attendance or something. There's just so many people interested that if you put something together, it's gonna happen. So I'm really excited to do the meetup on the 25th with Bootstrap, network with my local group, and then try to jumpstart Boom so we can have our own meetup going into the future.
Can you pick one time this weekend where you just kind of got stopped in your tracks and went, whoa?
I guess, getting the advice after my presentation, kind of maybe rethinking my strategy on things. I guess understanding, like the way that I grow food, it is really special. I don't use any type of poisons, chemicals, pesticides, nothing. I don't till the land. Everything's focused on soil health and the maximum nutrition and biology on my food. So trying to find customers that really know what that is and appreciate that, and trying to find those customers. I guess that was a big thing for me, that as I move forward, trying to sell more, should I go to restaurants, individuals? Like, there's so many ways to sell things. So trying to get the nutrient dense food in the hands of people that really need it as well. So that was one of my bigger realizations about how I should move forward with my farm, and just to continue doing what I'm doing, keep sharing the message of natural farming, and trying to push that as far as I can and share that message with as many people as possible.
The thing that really surprised me about this whole thing, like when we were putting together this list, I mean, we really just did think of like the people that we felt really had something that they needed to share with the world. And I think what I even underestimated was the amount of information that we were able to cross-share. Like, we're all doing something completely unique, really. It's like, very different when you think about it, but we learned so much from each other. Like, I mean, talking to Jeff, like, all these conversations, like, there's certainly, if you go to a market gardening meetup, you're certainly gonna learn a lot, and you would expect to. But I didn't even think that the amount that we'd be able to exchange with each other, because we have such diverse interests and backgrounds. I mean, but that really, it took me by surprise, and that's why the conversations were going till 1 a.m. every night, because we just had so much in common and so much to learn from each other, where, I'm looking forward to doing it again.
I think you in particular could speak to the fact of there's the event, and then there's the, hey, we're gonna do this thing between this hour and this hour, but then there's all those other hours in between and after and before where is just as, if not more valuable and more galvanizing towards the group to really build those relationships. Certainly at AgTech Week, when you and I and Ryan and met up on the rooftop, and then when we would go out with Mike and wife and everybody else, that's where those relationships were formed. It wasn't at the conference per se, but it was at the other stuff. And here tonight and last night, we were able to just stay in the same house. That was very intentional. That we got one big ass house and had rooms for the out of towners to stay at, so we wouldn't have to worry about hotels and things like that. But
And after a couple beers, talking with someone that's got an indoor farm, and I'm looking to solve their problems, with some of the things we offer. And we came up with a couple of drunken inventions, and I can't wait to take the notes on it. And because it's not always obvious what your own needs are, but when you have kind of a loosey-goosey conversation, awesome things come up. And look, we're all getting something out of this. There's no doubt about that, and I don't need to hide that either. And so I feel really grateful that I can reach out to you and say, hey, I have this product idea. Would you mind testing it on your farm for me? And you're like, hell yeah, dude, because I think that could be awesome. And that gives me validation. But now I have a place that I can actually test it, because I can't do everything myself. And so that's why this network's important, because you're also helping me a lot. And I appreciate that.
And it goes both ways. I mean, if your product is as good and as successful as we anticipate it to be, that's going to be a wild improvement for my farm. And then on the other side of it, you get a testimonial before it's even launched from a commercial grower. So it's just like the value exchange goes both ways, and I think that's the big takeaway from this, is that as long as everyone's willing to offer something that whether they personally even realize it's valuable or not, as long as they're willing to share, that's where the value comes out of this whole thing.
so, in discussing who was coming and building that dream list of who we wanted, a lot of the things we do here at Bootstrap is focused on sending the ladder back down, taking care of people within our community, and Dawson's name certainly came up. Not just because he's young, not just for all the things I think you get attached with, but just because Brandon and I put ourselves in a position of, we knew what Masterminds had meant to us early on in the beginning. And if I think both of us had not been such shitbirds and juvenile delinquents and had something like this when we were that young, where would we be today, kind of thing. So somebody that's showing great initiative, it's like, let's bring them in. Let's just see what happens. Let's expose you to all of these other people. So looking at the success and where everybody's coming at, and a lot of very diverse backgrounds that you witnessed yesterday, what'd you bring out of this?
Well, I came in with eyes wide open, and I was really just blown away by the whole thing. But you mentioned the diverse backgrounds. I got more out of Mike and and Nylash. Those three, they aren't farmers, but I got more out of their presentation than anybody else's. And I think that it's the diversity in backgrounds it's critical. If you don't have people coming from all the sectors of agriculture, you're just not going to get as many great ideas and as much back and forth, and be able to grow the industry as much. But when I presented and got a bunch of feedback, that I didn't really know what to expect, but it was a little bit left field compared to what I was thinking it might be, but in a great way. I'm super stoked to go back home and get things going and make things happen.
So, Piper, I don't know if we've really introduced you today during this talk, but we've been friends for a long time. Our circles intertwined 6 ways from Sunday, and very recently Bootstrap had the need for, we just needed help with a variety of things, plus we wanted somebody actively using our products whenever Brandon and I are fixing to really be busy and scale up, and we just couldn't do that anymore at the pace that we would like. So you're here to assist us in a multitude of special projects over the next year, and you're a part of this weekend as a participant and somebody just to help us survive the weekend, because there's a lot of things going on. But as you were just a part of the whole weekend overall, how was your week?
So I spent the majority of the week sort of behind the scenes helping out with Bootstrap, and knowing that it was a learning opportunity for me. I know a lot of these people, so the relationships were already there. It's easy for me to fit into these roles and help out. But what was surprising to me, sitting behind the camera, watching and listening, was I expected to hear kind of the same thing that I hear every time I'm around at all the events, and it wasn't like that at all. There were so many different pieces of information that hadn't been presented in the typical farmer grower environments or meetups that we're in. So it was interesting. So today on the last leg of the journey, to get to sit here and actually participate in conversation, I have a unique vantage point of being behind the scenes this whole week, hearing each of the little conversations. And just, I probably have more information than all y'all, because I got to hear a little bit of everybody's story. It was a unique takeaway in terms of the diversity of information that was presented, and it was excellent. It was very useful.
Cool.
I think for me, the biggest value that I got out of this is being surrounded by people who have that abundance mindset. I don't know if it's whether being in Connecticut or just the circle that I find myself in out there, but anytime we do something new as a business or have an idea that's a bit risky, it's always met with how are you really going to take that risk? Are you really going to go down that road? Why don't you just stay in your lane and stay safe? And it was pretty validating to come here and talk about trying to expand, and no one once asked why we were going to take that risk. It was all
Yeah. Hey, that's a crazy idea.
Yeah.
Can I come with you?
yeah, exactly. And it was just met with support and innovative ideas on how to think about stuff that we weren't thinking about in terms of ways to grow and scale. So the value in masterminds and networking and finding, we've used the term a couple times, but finding your tribe is finding people who support your crazy ideas, but understand that if they're met with proper planning and execution, that they're not crazy. They're systematic, and they're the way you move forward and you grow both individually and as a business. So that was the huge value to me. And then everyone's already said it, but the diversity of backgrounds within the industry, and just getting viewpoints and vantage points that you don't necessarily see every day. It just gets your brain thinking and the wheels turning, which is, as a business owner, is something that you gotta constantly be doing, otherwise you're stagnating. So it's just refreshing to be plopped in that environment and just run through a crash course of awesomeness, and then just being inspired by everyone to understand you're not in your own bubble. There's a lot of people out here that are working really hard to make this industry move forward, and if you're going to be a part of it, you gotta put the pedal to the metal to contribute as much as you can along with everyone else.
Yeah, so I would say that my biggest surprise being here was just how normal everybody is. I know that sounds crazy, but you know, to think about
What meeting did you go to?
well, like, maybe normal is not the right word, but more like down to earth and grounded is really what I mean. And I kind of had I was nervous about attending just because of the big names I knew that were going to be here, and I kind of built it up in my head, and just being able to know everyone and like Brandon's a normal guy. I mean, like, you know, I mean, he's like down to earth and really cool, and yeah, I mean, that was just really fun. I think you asked Stephen earlier about kind of like the big shock, like the big moment. And for me, that moment happened yesterday when we were, I think it was when we were kind of going over the podcast, and like you were showing me Bootstrap Farmer, like how they've done around the world and what the numbers were. And I just see, and I know I've mentioned this already, but just the global reach that the leaders here have and are going to have even more so. Especially with stuff like, you know, Urban Farm Academy and the social media presence that, you know, a lot of people have here. But I know, and you've taught English in Korea, and I taught English in Spain, and just understanding how food and agriculture is, and I don't have an understanding of it, but I'm learning how it's going to change around the world over the next, you know, 20 and 30 years. And how English everybody wants to learn English. Like, I mean, it's wild when you go to Europe. Like, you can make a ton of money just being American, you know, living overseas, because they want your accent. You know, they want you to teach them English because they want to talk like you. And so I just foresee that growing over time, and I feel like we're going to have more people reaching out to us from other countries, and maybe even, you know, world leaders reaching out, trying to understand urban farming and these different techniques of farming that are not traditional. And I think that's going to be incredibly powerful and incredibly cool and fun to watch and be a part of.
So on meetups, I always say if there's something coming along, and I will say yes. Yes, I'll go. Yes, I'll be there. And I learned that early on, that's the most important thing, is to have those connections with people. So that whenever, I mean, Bootstrap, I loved it because when it started, I knew Nick. And when he started, you know, we're going to do a podcast, yes. But, you know, whatever it was, yes. So that was I'm going to say yes. And then that's how I met Jeff. We also have some meetups in North Texas of farms. But I really feel like every weekend there's meetups because there's farmers markets all over. And I'll be at those farmers markets. I'll be there and talking to everybody. And that's the opportunity, an entry point for people to meet up. And those are kind of a social gathering of all like minds. Anytime I went to the other Bootstrap meetup, and we actually had our slow food crew meeting before the meetup, because I wanted them to all, and we were at the same space, because I wanted them to all be at the meetup. I'm always trying to pull other people into it. Now, as far as the invitational and this mastermind, that is a very specific meetup that I had never been involved in, and I was very excited about being invited. The shocker. Well, first of all, I wasn't going to do anything until Friday night, and I had all this work to do, and then I saw the WhatsApp that said, we're going to have lunch at Profound Foods. And I'm like, there is no reason I shouldn't be there. Drop everything that I was going to do for the whole day, and then I was going to come later and meet up. And I'm really glad I did, because, you know, Chef Micah had fixed a really good lunch at Profound, and I got some great pictures in the greenhouses, and that tour, you know, it was when I first met all of you, was it during that tour, but then we all jumped in our cars and we had to drive an hour and 10 minutes in Dallas traffic, and so who jumps in my car but Mike and Wyatt and Dotson, and it was like, I'm driving, I'm trying to follow the map, the traffic's bad, and they're having this conversation that is like, what? A lot of times, I'm in the conversation where people are going, what to me, and this was a bigger what, and I was like, some of these words I don't know, this is just like, the intelligence in that car, and so there was my shock, and I was like, what am I doing here? And fortunately, Mike, when you gave your presentation yesterday, I was like, okay, I know about that because I had a double run of what he was talking about. So I had a preview and then it had time to sink in. So I think that what we're going to have over the next few days is the ability to look back on this and then go, oh yeah, that we maybe haven't, it came, but it hasn't sunk in yet. So I personally encourage people to reflect immediately or within the next few days so that you get more out of it than just your presence here. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. There was not a lot that happened this weekend that wasn't planned and intentional, and one of those was the Friday night after our open meetup. We had a private meetup with just us. We had some drinks, we broke some bread, and we've just seen in the past that anytime you do that first, that when you come in to do the actual work at the thing, that everybody knows each other already, the comfort level is up, and for me the most important thing is you have a vested interest that's not fiduciary in each other. You want to see these people to succeed because now that you've met them, you're rooting for them in a way that just doesn't happen that much. And to intentionally do that first and to intentionally ask hard questions and to push each other in a very loving way, that's for us was a big key. So that's why we wanted to do these. Like, we almost had 2 meetups, right? Because we all first met each other on Thursday, and then we did it again a little more in a little more intimate setting on Friday, and then, as is stated, the in-between and the afterwards is really what cemented all of it in. And can any of you imagine leaving here and not staying in contact with each other? And that's how Brandon and I have built this network over the last few years, with a lot of work and a lot of effort, but work well spent. So I'm done. I'm just absolutely finished. So if you have anything to wrap it up, we're gonna.
I would say it's only been a year. You came on last April, and that's what goal setting does. It's crazy. It's like 2016, 2016, 2016, 2016.
That was a crazy year, apparently, right? Yeah. What was in the water that
year? But that's why like 10 to 15% of our podcasts are about goal setting, because it's like that. This is proof of what goal setting does, and so that's why we're all sharing it with everybody, because this is how we create our impact. This is how we scale our impact, imparting what we've learned along the way. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for watching. Big things in the future.
Sweet. Let's go get a
Thanks everybody for watching. I'll put links to all these different people's stuff in about a couple hours. I'll have the links for you guys so you can check out their personal pages and all the different projects that they're working on. It's a very diverse group of people, from indoor growers doing hydroponics, aquaponics, soil growers, flowers, edible flowers, people working with the highest level chefs in the country. So a lot of really valuable people here. I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.